Hi, thanks for joining the webinar today. My name is Tosin Lufadeju, and I'm a program manager on the Identity CXP team. Today, we'll be taking a look at how organizations such as yours can take advantage of Azure AD's governance features in monitoring the lifecycle for your users. We'll be looking at 4 features today. One will be PIM, Privileged Identity Management, Terms of Use, Entitlement Management, and Access Reviews. And for each of these 4 features, I'll go through demos of how they are configured. So let's get started. With the increased need for collaboration, not just for your internal users, but also your guests, as well as the multiple personas that now interact with corporate data, it's become more important than ever to be able to effectively monitor your user access. At Microsoft, we try to find a balance between security and productivity. Here, we try to make sure we're providing the right access to the right people and also doing this in a timely manner. That way, technology doesn't become an hindrance to productivity. We do this by asking a few questions. Who has access and who should have access to which resource? What are they doing with the access that's been granted to them? And then do we have effective controls in place for managing user access? Then finally, how can we verify these controls if we need them for audit or compliance purposes? This in entirety becomes the identity governance story. It's all about providing the right controls to ensure secure productivity across board. Now, governance is not a deploy and forget feature. We say this is a journey and reviews have to be made as you go along and as things change in your environment. We also group governance into 3 buckets. One is the identity lifecycle itself. How do we get a user into your environment? What happens as this user's role or responsibilities change? And then how do we follow this user through to the point where eventually leaves the company? Today, we're looking at a case study. We're looking at working with a company, Woodgrove, and Woodgrove is a marketing company working to collaborate with other organizations to share data on a marketing campaign. Woodgrove has a few challenges which we're trying to solve today. The first one is a recent audit discovered you have too many users with standing access, so admin level privileges. The next one is now the legal regulation requires users to sign a non-disclosure agreement before getting access to certain resources and applications. The third one is there's a need to now streamline the process of getting access to resources and permissions assigned to users when they join the team to work on projects. And finally, we want to have a better visibility for guest activity in our environment. So what happens when partners join to work with Woodgrove on projects? How do we know who should stay in and when they're done so we can revoke access? These are the challenges we're going to be solving today using the 4 features we talked about earlier. And now we can go to the first one. For the first challenge, we're going to be using Privileged Identity Management, or PIM. Now, what PIM does is it reduces the amount of users with standing access in your environment by having them request just-in-time activation when they need to perform elevated tasks. Some of the things you could do with PIM would be to discover already privileged roles in your environment, not just for Azure AD, but then also Office 365 and Azure itself. Also, by reducing the number of users with standing access in your environment, you reduce the surface attack. We also recommend that when using PIM, you also use other authentication methods like MFA to strengthen your security posture. Then I mentioned earlier, just-in-time activation. With PIM, we support start times and end dates in the future. By default, you get a start date of today, but then you can set activation times in the future so users get provisioned at that time. And when this expires, the access is removed from that role. Finally, with PIM, you're able to generate audit reports for compliance and audit purposes. Now, let's go into a demo of how PIM is used. So I'll go in and sign into the Woodgrove tenant now. Here I get prompted for MFA, which I'll go ahead and use the Microsoft Authenticator app for. And then I should be into the tenant. Now, the first thing I want to do is go in and see what roles I have right now. So by going in the overview board, I'm able to come in here and see my current role. Currently in the Woodgrove tenant, I am a global reader. That means I can read everything on this tenant, but can't make changes. For the rest of this demo, I would need to make changes. And so I'll go straight to identity governance and privileged identity management on the side. Now here under my roles section, I can see three things: the roles I'm eligible for, roles I have active right now, and roles that have expired. If in the past I'd used any time-bound roles, I expect to see those here because I'll see details of the expiry. Now, I'll go back to eligible roles, and here I would activate my global administrator role. Please note for PIM, you can do this with other roles, so help desk, application admin, Dynamics 365 admin as well. Now, here's why I specified the duration in which I want to have access for. By default, you get 24 hours, but then you can have as little as 30 minutes if needed. For this demo, I'll go ahead and select 2 hours. If I wanted a start time in the future, I could click customize activate or custom activation time and select what the start time or date should be. Here I would specify the reason for this. Working on the summer campaign, and I'll click on activate. And then I go through this 3-step process of activation. One is processing the request. The other one is validating the activation. And finally, I should get a confirmation that this has been completed. Okay, now the 3 stages are complete. My page would refresh. Now, when I go back to my active roles, I can see the global administrator already active. Now, you might wonder, how do we do this? So for instance, I need to set up a new user for a different level of, like a different permission. All I do is go back into the PIM blade and I can click on manage access. Now I can click on manage access now that I have admin privileges, and I can see all the roles in my environment, as well as how many I have active and how many I have eligible. For each of these roles, I can click on it and create a new assignment. So for instance, I could click on the authentication administrator and click add assignment. And in here, select a member of my organization that I want to give this role to. So I can go in and select Mark and pick Mark and select it. Now I go through next, and I can specify how long I want him to have access to. Do I want this to be permanently eligible, or do I want him to opt in every time he needs access? In this case, I'll take this off, and then I can select how long I want this access to last for. In this case, I'll leave it as 1 year, and I'll leave this as eligible. And I can go ahead and assign the permission to the user. Now Mark is eligible for that. I could always come in here and remove it if I think he doesn't need the access anymore, or just update things such as the time and duration that this will last for. With the overview pane of PIM, you can go in and get insights. Some of the insights that you might want to consider are this: how many administrators in your environment do not use their already privileged roles? So here I can come in this example, I have 124 users. I can come in and review the list and at any point decide if I need to take out anyone from this. Typically, you see users in this list because they haven't used their access in 30 days. And if you are looking for ways to decide who needs access and who doesn't really need access, these are some of the matrices you can use. So with PIM, I can go in as an admin and look at pending requests. If I'd set up a role where someone needs to activate, then I could come in here and approve those or deny those depending on what I thought the reason was for that. Please note that this could also be done for Azure AD roles, groups, and Azure resources. PIM works for all 3 of those. Finally, when all changes are made, it's stored in the audit log. And so I can come into the audit log and then see information about what I've done in this tenant. Also, the export button allows you to download this, and you can use this for audit purposes as well. Okay, so now we've seen how PIM works and how I was able to activate my admin privileges using PIM. Now, for the second challenge, we have a legal regulation now where users have to sign a non disclosure agreement before having access to certain resources and applications. In this case, we're going to look at a scenario where a new person joins the team, and before they have access to applications in the Woodgrove tenant, they need to sign a terms of use agreement. For this, we'll use the terms of use feature. Now, this allows companies enforce signing an agreement before getting access granted to them. It simply is an easy way to present information to your end users, requiring their consent after authentication and prior to getting access. On the right side of the screen is the end user experience for terms of use. The user gets prompted when they try to access an application to go in and either accept or decline the terms of use policy. Now, one thing to note is if they decline this, they go in a loop and keep seeing the same prompt until they eventually accept it, because that's the only way they get access. Now, some common reasons why organizations might use terms of use. One, it might just be a general policy in the organization requiring your users to see some information before and agree to it before getting access. The other one, it could be specific to certain applications, either your high impact applications or applications that contain sensitive information or confidential information. The third reason is due to government regulations such as GDPR or privacy concerns. You might need to let your users know what information you're collecting from them and have them consent to that. Then finally, audit and compliance reasons. Deploying terms of use policies are quite easy. First, you create the policy itself, and this is where you upload the PDF document that the user is expected to read. And then you enforce this using conditional access. Now, the terms of use policy is created in the governance blade, but then the enforcement is done with conditional access. Eventually, your users get the prompt, and then they can accept or decline, and then your admin can now go ahead and generate audit reports. It's good to note that this can be done in multiple languages, and all you would have to do is select a language like we'll see in a few minutes, and then also upload the file. Now let's go into the portal and see how terms of use work. Now we need to enforce the terms of use policy. I'll go ahead and create a new one and then specify what the name should be. In this case, I'll go with Summer 20 terms of use. And now here I can scope it. So which users should be in scope of this? I can go ahead and select users and groups, directory roles, or just scope this to only guests. In this case, I'll go ahead and select my summer campaign group. And then also I can come in here and specify the applications they should apply to. You can go in and do either all cloud apps or select specific applications, in which you go through your list and select which applications you consider to be high impact or what applications need the consent. For the sake of this demo, I'll keep it simple and just say all cloud apps. Now, in the grants access control, I get a chance to look at all the access review policies that I have on my tenants, and I can select the one that applies here. In this case, I'll select the Summer Campaign 2020, and I'll do select. Then I need to turn on this policy and create. Now, a few seconds after I get complete sign, and then I know this policy is active. Now let's go ahead and see what the end user experience is for one of the users in the Summer 2020 group is like. So for the end user experience, I can come in as another user in this group. So I'll go to the Office 365 website. And here I'm coming in as my user Rose. Rose is a member of the group, which is in scope of this policy. So I'll go ahead and satisfy MFA. And then I should get logged in. Now, because this was set to all cloud apps, now Rose has to accept this. Now, this is the summer campaign policy we created a few minutes ago. Now, if I click on accept, I'll get this prompt that says, we must view. Remember, we had said saying this consent must be expanded before you can accept. Now, I can click on OK. And in this case, click on the policy which we attached. Now, here's the PDF document. And I can go through and read what the terms and conditions were. And eventually I can accept. Now, by doing this, Rose should have access. And then now she can go in and have access to other things in the Woodgrove environment. Finally, in the admin experience, I can go back now to the policy which we created, Summer Campaign 2020, and I can see one person has accepted it and 0 have declined. To see more information about the user accepted, I can click on it, and then I see which user in my environment has accepted this. Now, if anyone had denied it, I could also see the same. That's the end user experience for terms of use. Now let's go back to the case study. So for the third challenge Woodgrove is facing, we're saying the approval process takes a while when a new person joins the team. Usually that would mean multiple people have to be involved in getting the right access on behalf of the guest user. Now, what we're trying to do is to streamline the process of getting resources and permissions assigned to a new user. So if someone joined the team and needed to work on this summer campaign, they have the right access to the user groups, the applications, and SharePoint sites they need. For this, we'll use entitlement management. This allows the organization to manage access to groups, apps, and SharePoint sites for both users within and also outside of your organization. It provides a way for the user to request and also for administrators and non-administrators to accept and grant access if needed. For entitlement management, we use the concept of catalogs and packages. Catalogs determine the resources that can be added to access packages, while the access package collects permissions across all apps that are integrated with Azure AD and provides access to those. You can use this for group memberships, app memberships, both cloud and on-prem, as well as SharePoint and Teams roles. Another advantage of entitlement management is you can delegate this task to non-administrators as well. They can add their own resources, define policies, including who can have access and who can approve access, and also how long they should be granted for. With entitlement management, you can create 2 different policies for your internal users and also the external users. So for instance, I can have a policy that says for up to 180 days, my internal users do not need to renew their privileges or their permissions, while for external users, I want a shorter span of 90 days, for instance. Also, I can specify the roles for applications. And so I can say for internal users on the SharePoint site, I want to give them the role of contributor, while for the external users, I give them just visitors. Now let's go in and see how an access package will be created for this project. So back in the governance blade of the portal, I can go in to identity governance, and I see the option here for the entitlement management. I can go ahead and click create a new access package, and here is where I get to specify the different resources needed. One blade back, I could also go in and look at all the previously created access packages. Here I see one has already been created for the summer 2020 campaign, and now this can be reused if I have similar or related projects. To create a new access package, I can come in and click New Access Package. Here is where I specify the name of the package. In this example, I'll go with Summer Campaign 2020. And then for the description, I'll do the same thing. Here's where I get to specify the catalog. I can go in and look at all the different catalogs I have if I have resources specific to those. If you do not select any options, by default, you get assigned general. To create a new catalog, please use the link below here, and it will give you a walkthrough of what to do. Next, I'll need to specify the resources. What groups do I need the users to have access to? For my summer campaign, I've put most of users in the summer campaign partners group. And so I'll go ahead and select that. And then also I need to specify what applications I'm granting access to. In this case, I would say Salesforce, select that. And I could also have other applications if I needed to. So I could also come in here and specify just an example. Finally, I get to look at the SharePoint sites. What SharePoint sites do I want to grant access to when people join this? For this example, I'll go ahead and select the community SharePoint site, and I can select. Now, remember, this can be delegated to non-administrative users who work closely with your guest users and know what level of permissions they need. Therefore, they can actually come in and assign roles as well. So for the groups, I want them to be members. For Salesforce, I want them to be marketing users. For Expensify, I want to have the default. And finally, for the community, I want to make them viewers. Next, we move to the request. Who can request? Who's eligible to request this access package? You have three options. One is users who already exist in your directory. Then the next one is external users or users who don't exist in your directory. And finally, you need to specify if you want to directly assign specific users this package. In our case, I'll select for users not in our directory. Then here we have the concept of connected organizations. If you constantly partner with an organization, please go in and add them as a connected organization. How you do this is by including the domain name, and from that point, all users with that domain name can now request access. In this case, I'll specify all users, which is the connection of all connected organizations as well as external users. And by default, you require an approval for this. You can specify how many stages, and if you require justification, you could also select who the first approval should be. It could be external, internal, or you could specify who that should be. In this case, I'll include myself. And then I can go down to the bottom where it asks me if I want to enable new requests and assignments. If I click yes, then this can be used for other access packages. And then if I say no, then it just would apply to this one. Next, by clicking the life cycle, I can determine how long I want this package assignment to be valid for. Because it's a summer project, I don't expect it to last that long, and so I can go and reduce the time to 100 days. Then here's where I select whether I want this to require an access review or not. For this example, I'll go ahead and say no, and then I can review and create. Now, this gives me another chance to look at everything I've created, the roles, the groups, and as well as the applications that I've selected. And then I can go ahead and create those. Now the access package has been created. The important thing to know here is the My Access portal link. So how do the users now request for access in this access package? By taking this link and sharing it with whoever is needing to join the team or whoever joins the team, they're able to get that one-stop spot where they go ahead and access this. Now, let's go ahead and show what the end user experience is. Now, to view the end user experience, I'm going to log in with my official account. Now, let's assume Microsoft does collaborations with Woodgrove, and so I've gotten the link from the manager. I'll go in and paste in here the access link, which we just retrieved. And now it would ask me to sign in. So I can go in here and sign in with my Microsoft email address. I'll go ahead and put in my password. And now I have access. So now I can see the access package and I can see the summer 2020 guest we just created. By clicking on this, I could request access and specify, hi, specify that here I'm working on the summer campaign, and then I could also either specify a period or just leave that as the default. Here, I'll go ahead and leave it as default and then hit submit. Now this request is sent to the approver. And also if I had a pending request, I can as well come in here and look at those. So this will stay this way until it's accepted. And at that point, I can come in and look at what exactly is in the access package. Okay, so back at the admin, on the admin portal, I can come in and look at the access review. Here I see for Summer Campaign 2020 guest, I have one pending request. Also, another thing to note is an email was sent out when Tosin requested this access, and I've gotten an email prompt such as this. Now I can click on this to either approve or deny this request. And so for each of these, I can go in and select either view the details of this, view access packet details to see what groups, team sites, and permissions were given. And then I can go ahead and either accept or decline. Here I would say, I could say approved, and I could specify what the reason is for audit purposes. And then click on approve. Now the status here will change to approved, and on Tosin's end, he can now view the content of this access package and get to work. So for our final challenge, Woodgrove wants to have better visibility on their external users' lifecycle. Let's imagine a user comes in and works on a project. The IT admin really has no idea when the user should be taken out. So what happens typically is either the user gets left in there or the user moves on to a different project and just keeps stacking up privileges. IT admins do not know external users, and really this is something the team leads would be better people to speak on. Also, should the user still have access and when it should be removed is better determined by the business users themselves. So for this, we use access reviews. Access reviews give you a way to recertify, attest, and audit your access. You can allow continued access or revoke if needed. And users can be reviewed on a regular basis to make sure only the right people have continued access to resources. Let's look at this example. If the user joined marketing and go assign marketing applications, SharePoint sites, and permissions, but now has moved to operations, what we ideally expect is the user loses permissions that belong to marketing and gain those for operations. That's where active review comes into place. It provides a simple process of ensuring that users have the right access. One thing to note is access review is an after-the-fact control, which means we assume you already have the right controls and you're members of the right groups or have permissions to the right applications until we're specifically told to deny that permission. Now, for access reviews, the users get prompts like this, in which you get to specify what the reason is and if you still need access. And that way we can take further action on those. Some scenarios which we see access review being used is for the employee scenario. And here what we have is people change jobs or eventually leave the company. And some problems we have is that previous access was never removed or users just continue to accumulate excessive permissions. For your guests and external users, we have a problem of what access should they have and when should they be removed as well from the environment. With access reviews, you can review office groups, security group memberships, as well as users assigned to applications. Another thing about access reviews is this could be scoped to only guests, so that way you have a better visibility on what your guest lifecycle is. Now, for reviewers, you could have the group owners review their groups. You could have members review their own membership, and then you could also select specific people if you have that task delegated in your organization. The path with access reviews typically would be you creating the access review, Reviewers getting the emails and providing the feedback, and then we can take the results and apply those to the roles. Eventually, audit reports can be generated, and those can be stored as well. By default, you get 30 days of audit logs, but then if for other reasons you needed to extend this, then there are ways to do this as well. Now, with the access review process, the first thing we do is to identify the resources where the users have access. And then we identify all the business owners and who should be confirming access for that. Then we have the business owners review access on a regular basis. Access reviews are typically scheduled. And then they can go in line by line and either accept or deny users access and provide justification if needed. When this reviews are complete, access is removed from all users that were denied, and all the results are subsequently logged. And then you can keep those for audit or compliance purposes in the future. So let's go in and see how access reviews work. We're back in the governance portal, and on the left side, you have access reviews. First, I can look in and see all the reviews that I have in this tenant, as well as the status, if they're still active or if they're complete. Now, with completed access reviews, you're able to go in and see what the results were, as well as what the recommendations were. So in the overview blade, you can see a couple of things. How many apps you have currently being reviewed, how many groups you have been reviewed, as well as the recent programs which you have in your environment. You also get some more insights into the number of guest members and app access, as well as for the access review status, you get to see how many are active, completed, and applied. Now, to create a new access review, we'll go back into the access review blade and click on new access review. Here I can specify the name. To be consistent, I'll use the same name we've used in most of the demos. Summer Campaign 2020, and I can go ahead and do the same thing here. And now this is where I specify the start date. Do I want this? By default, you start on today's date, but then this could also be pushed in the future. So if you had a project that wasn't starting until a couple of days ahead, you could as well do the same thing. Okay, now here's where you specify the frequency of this review. Should this be a one-time review? Or then do you want this done weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, and then annually? And then here you can specify the duration in days and then when they should end. If I said I wanted a monthly review to make sure that users still have access, users should still have access, then I can go ahead and select that. And then I can select what the end date should be. Should it be, I can either specify the date or select the number of occurrences. In this case, I can go with occurrences and select 10. And then that populates what the date will be. Then it goes to what am I trying to review? Here's where I get to decide what I'm trying to review. Am I trying to review members of a group or members assigned to an application? For this demo, I'd go with members of groups. And then do I want everyone or just guest users only? In our example, we're trying to see who the guests are in the Woodgrove tenant. And so we'll go with guest users. And then I'll go ahead and select the group which we've been working with, which is the summer campaign group. Now, do I want the group owners to review this? Do I want a selected user to review access? Or should this task be delegated to the members themselves? In this case, I can have members themselves review their access. And then here I get to select what happens upon completion. Do I want to automatically apply the results, which means if someone was denied, then we remove them? Or do I want to disable it and actually manually do that task? Also, I get to specify what happens if a reviewer doesn't respond to the email. So you could take the Microsoft recommendations, and typically Microsoft recommendations would be similar to the, hey, this user hasn't signed in 30 days, and so we recommend that you deny them access. So in this case, I'll go ahead and select take recommendations. And then also under advanced settings, you get to set things like reminders, mail notifications, as well as requiring a reason for approval. So when all these have been filled, I can go ahead and select and start the access review. Now this is successful. And so from this point, users in that group will get emails asking them to verify their access. All right, so a quick example of what the end user experience for this would be. So for each user in that group, they get an email similar to this that says, hey, you have a review and you need to review your own access. By clicking review access, the user gets to sign in again and then specify how long, yes, they still need access, or no, if they feel like they're done and need to be removed, as well as why they still need access. So here I can specify still working on the summer campaign. And submit. Now this input has been taken in and I have a yes. So the Microsoft recommendation would not be to remove me because I've opted in at this point. And then it gets sent, and then the administrator can also go in and review. So now that we've gone through the couple of scenarios, we've looked at privileged identity management, terms of use, access reviews, and also entitlement management. Some key takeaways from this are, we've seen how Azure AD's different features can actually help address your identity governance requirements. We advise that if please go ahead and use access reviews to gain better control of your user lifecycle. And also for those that have standing users access in their environments, please reduce those from permanent to eligible. Please note that governance features are P2 and you require premium licenses for those. Thank you for joining today's webinar. For more information on any of these features, please use the links listed below. Look forward to seeing you in other webinars. Take care.